Our life seemed perfect. Sarah and I had been married for 12 years. We had built a family to be proud of. Two beautiful children, a cozy house in the suburbs, successful careers for each of us. Everything seemed stable and peaceful. We both worked hard to provide comfort for our family, but Sarah was always the more social and energetic one. She loved to organize parties, which became our family tradition. These events were Sarah's way of expressing her creativity. She worked as an interior designer, and every party was a real show, from the perfect decor to the gourmet food. At first, we cooked together, but later she decided to invite a professional chef to make these events even more special. I supported her idea because it freed us from unnecessary hassle, and the guests were always delighted with the menu. That's how Lucas came into our lives. He was a young and charismatic chef with a talent that fascinated everyone. He quickly became a favorite of our guests, and Sarah was also impressed by his skills. At first, I didn't see anything wrong with that. He was a professional who did his job at a high level. But over time, I noticed how often Sarah mentioned him in conversations. Sarah had always been energetic and cheerful, but after a few parties organized with Lucas, a new spark appeared in her. She began to smile more often, talk about how important it is to have a real passion for your work, and even started to take an interest in cooking herself. She began to spend more time in the kitchen, experimenting with the recipes that Lucas offered. I could see her inspiration, but at the same time, something about this situation made me uncomfortable. At first, I thought it was just a new hobby. Sarah was always enthusiastic when she found something interesting. But I started to worry about how often she talked about Lucas, how much attention she paid to his ideas. Once she even suggested that we invite him not only to our big parties, but also to small family dinners. She said it would be a great way to improve our cooking skills. I agreed, but the idea seemed strange to me. Lucas began to appear in our house more often. He was a master of his craft, and his dishes were always admired. He easily found a common language with his guests, talking about his travels and culinary discoveries. But I began to notice how Sarah changed when he was around. Her eyes would light up, her voice would get softer, and her laughter would come out more often. She always looked happy when Lucas was working in our kitchen. One day, after another party, I overheard them talking. They were standing in the kitchen, and their voices sounded too close. Lucas was telling me how much he loved creating something special for people and how inspiring it was to see them enjoy the food. Sarah laughed and said he had an incredible gift. I could feel the tension building inside me. This was not just a professional conversation. There was something else in their voices, something I couldn't explain, but which made me feel jealous. After this incident, I started to observe their interaction more. Every time Lucas came to our house, I noticed them exchanging glances that were hard to miss. I would see them standing side by side, their hands almost touching as they cooked together. It was hard to ignore, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. One evening, when Sarah came home from meeting her friends, I decided to talk to her. I told her I had noticed how much she admired Lucas and asked if there was anything I should know about. She smiled and said that I was exaggerating, that there was nothing between them except work. But her answers failed to allay my suspicions. Her smile was too strained, and her tone seemed unnaturally calm. My doubts began to grow. I didn't want to believe there could be anything more between them, but the evidence kept piling up. I noticed how Sarah started spending more time in the kitchen, even when she didn't need to cook. She was spending a lot of time on her phone, and I couldn't help but wonder if she was talking to Lucas in those moments. Her behavior changed, and it couldn't go unnoticed. It culminated when one day I found her phone, which she had forgotten on the table. I saw a message from Lucas. This evening was unforgettable. Thank you for being you. My heart sank. These were not just words. It was a confirmation of my worst fears. It seemed to me that the whole world was falling apart around me, and I didn't know how to cope with it. After I saw the message from Lucas, my world turned upside down. I could no longer ignore the details that had seemed insignificant before. Everything looked different now. Her frequent phone calls, her delays in the kitchen, the parties she organized for no apparent reason. I decided not to act hastily, but a storm was brewing inside me. I began to observe her behavior even more closely. Sarah became more distant, although she tried to hide it. She avoided direct conversations about her feelings and talked more often about work or children. But I noticed her absence at important moments for us. She was no longer interested in how my day went and did not ask how I was feeling. One day, I decided to share my feelings with my best friend Tom. He was the person I always went to for advice. Tom listened to me carefully and told me that I should talk to her directly, but only when I was ready for any answer. His words made me think, was I ready to find out the truth? I decided to give myself time and gather more evidence. At the same time, I tried to keep our family relationship afloat. We went for walks with the children together, watched movies in the evenings, but the feeling that something had changed between us did not disappear. It was as if we were playing roles in a play where everything seemed perfect, but behind the scenes a completely different life was hidden. One evening, when Sarah said she was going to the store, I decided to check if it was true. I got in the car and followed her. She did not go to the store as she said, but parked near a small cafe in the city center. My hands were shaking when I saw her go inside. A few minutes later, Lucas came in as well. They were sitting at a table by the window, talking and laughing. Her face was glowing like I hadn't seen in a long time. It hurt like a knife in the heart. I wanted to rush in and tell them everything I was thinking, but something held me back. I sat in the car, watching them and feeling my anger mix with despair. After that evening, I realized that I could no longer live in a state of suspense. I decided to talk to her. It was one of the hardest conversations of my life. I waited until the children went to bed and asked her directly, "What is going on between you and Lucas?" Her reaction was shocking. She fell silent, then started crying and finally confessed. She said that their relationship started as a friendship. She felt lonely when I was too busy with work, and Lucas was the one who listened to her. She assured me that there was nothing physical between them, but their emotional connection crossed a line that I could forgive. I listened to her, and anger and frustration grew inside me. Sarah said that she wanted to save our marriage, that she was ready to stop all contact with Lucas. But I could not accept her words so easily. I felt betrayed in my own home, and this thought haunted me. I decided that we needed more time to see if we could move on. The following days were filled with tension. We tried to talk to each other, but every conversation turned into an argument. I felt like our marriage was on the brink of collapse, and I didn't know if it was worth trying to save it. Sarah, on the other hand, did everything she could to prove her loyalty. She deleted Lucas' number, stopped organizing parties, and started spending more time with her family. I decided that we needed help. We went to a family psychologist. The first sessions were difficult. I couldn't control my emotions, and Sarah felt guilty. But gradually we began to understand each other better. I admitted that maybe I was to blame for what happened because I was too focused on my work and didn't pay enough attention to our marriage. Sarah said that she never wanted to cheat on me, but that her feelings of loneliness pushed her to Lucas. Despite this, it was not easy to forgive. I felt that the trust we had built over the years had been destroyed. But at the same time, I realized that I didn't want to lose our family. We decided to continue therapy and work on our relationship. I knew it would be a long and difficult road, but I hoped we could find a way to stay together. After a few sessions with a psychologist, I began to realize that my problems with Sarah went deeper than just her relationship with Lucas. Of course, her betrayal was a painful blow, but it was a symptom of a long-standing gap between us. We were both guilty of not seeing it until it was too late. Sarah tried to change. She completely stopped communicating with Lucas, and it was noticeable. She no longer offered to organize parties and instead focused on her family. She started spending more time with her children, organizing family nights and going for walks together. Her efforts were obvious, but I still couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I, in turn, also began to analyze my behavior. Was I really the man she wanted? Perhaps my constant delays at work, fatigue, and unwillingness to pay attention to her feelings created the perfect conditions for her to pull away. I tried to make up for it. We started cooking dinner together, talking more about our plans for the future. But the trust was broken, and I didn't know if it could be rebuilt. One day, Sarah suggested that we spend an evening just for the two of us. She said she wanted to try to restore our intimacy. I agreed, although I still had my doubts. We went to the restaurant where we had once celebrated our first anniversary. This event brought back a wave of memories. I looked at Sarah and saw the woman I had loved many years ago, but at the same time I saw the woman who had hurt me. Over dinner, we talked about our past. Sarah told me how hard it was for her to feel alone, even in the presence of her family. She explained that Lucas was the one who listened to her and made her feel important. Her words were painful, but I tried to understand her. That evening was the first step to start talking openly. I admitted to her that after her betrayal, I felt less valuable. That it was hard for me to look at her without remembering Lucas's eyes or the moments when they were together. Sarah listened and did not interrupt. She said she understood my feelings and that she was willing to do anything to regain my trust. Despite this, our path to recovery was not easy. We still fought, sometimes over little things that didn't matter. I noticed how her phone still made me anxious, even if she was just receiving a message from a friend. This constant tension was exhausting for both of us. We decided to return to therapy. The psychologist helped us find a way to cope with the pain. One day he suggested an exercise, to write a letter to each other in which we would express everything we felt but could not say out loud. This task turned out to be difficult, but it yielded results. In my letter, I wrote how much I was hurt by her betrayal. I mentioned all the moments when I felt unnoticed and unnecessary. But I also wrote that I wanted to forgive her because I still loved her. I wrote that our past is important to me, but I am ready to build a new future if she wants it too. Sarah wrote back with her own letter. She admitted how much she regretted what she had done. She wrote that her actions were not caused by the fact that she lacked love for me, but by the fact that she did not feel loved. She wrote that she was ready to devote her life to making us happy together again. These letters became a reset point for us. We realized that we had to work on our relationship every day. We started talking more, openly discussing our feelings and desires. It was not easy, but we both saw progress. However, the past still sometimes reminded us of itself. One day, I found an old photo from one of our parties, where Lucas was also present. This picture brought a wave of emotions to me. I showed it to Sarah, and she suggested that we throw away all the things that could remind us of that period. It was another gesture that helped me feel that she really wanted to leave it all behind. We decided that we needed more time alone. We started planning small trips together, even if they were just trips to the next town. These moments helped us remember why we fell in love with each other. We laughed, talked about everything, and felt like we were getting closer again. Our relationship was still far from perfect, but we were moving forward. I no longer looked at Sarah only through the prism of her betrayal. I saw her as a woman who had made a mistake, but sincerely wanted to fix it. She showed it not with words, but with actions, and that was the most important thing for me. We decided not to hide our problems from our children, but we explained everything in a way that was accessible to their age. Jake and Lily saw us working on our relationship, and it taught them that even in difficult moments, it is important to support each other. After everything that happened, I started to feel like we were building a new foundation for our marriage. It was not easy, but every small step forward gave us the strength to continue. We decided that the past would no longer rule our lives. And although the pain still came back sometimes, we knew that together we could cope with it. Our work on the relationship had borne fruit, but the pain and doubts did not leave me. Every little thing could trigger memories of what had happened, and these moments brought back the feeling of betrayal. Sarah continued to show her devotion. She was gentle, caring, and open, but I still felt anxious inside. One evening, when we gathered for a family dinner, Sarah suddenly suggested that we spend the weekend at our favorite country house. She said it would be a chance for both of us to escape our routine and spend time together. The idea sounded good to me, although I doubted whether it would change anything in our dynamic. We took the kids and went there the next day. The country house was a place we had always loved. In the middle of the forest, by the lake, it reminded us of the happy times when we were young and carefree. Sarah decorated the rooms with candles, prepared dinner, and we spent a cozy evening together. She talked about how she wanted our life to be better and how important it was for her that I trusted her again. After that evening, I started to notice a change in myself. I no longer looked at her with the same sadness and pain. Her actions began to speak more than her words. She refused to have any contact with Lucas, even remotely. Her new job did not involve frequent contact with other people, and she spent more time with her family. I could see her efforts, and it helped me gradually rebuild my trust. However, an unexpected event brought us back to the past. One day, I received an anonymous letter saying that Sarah was still in contact with Lucas. The letter was written as if the author wanted to raise doubts in me. It contained details that could indicate that they were still in contact. I was in a state of panic. I couldn't believe that after everything we had been through, this could be true. I decided not to show Sarah the letter right away. I needed time to understand whether it was just someone's manipulation or whether there was any truth in it. I turned to a mutual friend of ours who worked as a private detective. He agreed to check the situation and find out if Sarah really had contact with Lucas. The week of waiting was the hardest in my life. I tried to behave naturally, not showing Sarah that something was bothering me. At the same time, I kept thinking about what would happen if the letter was true. Would I be able to survive another betrayal? Would our marriage survive another blow? When my friend returned with the results, I felt both relieved and ashamed. He confirmed that Sarah had no contact with Lucas. The letter was an attempt to provoke us into a conflict. Perhaps it was one of the guests at our parties, or just a person who knew about our situation. I realized that my doubts were unfounded and felt guilty for questioning her loyalty. I decided to tell Sarah about the letter. She was shocked but not surprised. She said she expected someone to try to manipulate us. She assured me that she didn't hold it against me for having doubts. Her reaction was another confirmation of her sincerity. This situation was a lesson for both of us. We realized how important it is to be open and honest with each other. We agreed that we would no longer let the past influence our future. It wasn't easy, but we could see that our efforts were paying off. We started spending more time together, planning new trips, and creating joint projects. We decided to renovate our house to start a new chapter in our lives. This process became a symbol of our recovery. We worked together, discussed every detail, and it helped us feel like a team again. Gradually, I started to notice how the pain was fading into the background. I no longer felt the need to check her phone or question her every word. I could see her trying, and it inspired me. One evening, as we sat on the terrace, Sarah said to me, "I know you still carry this pain inside you, but I want you to know that I will do everything I can to make sure you never feel betrayed again." Her words sounded sincere, and I felt something inside me change. It was the moment when I realized I was ready to forgive her completely. The culmination of our story was not dramatic. It was a calm moment when we both realized that our love was worth fighting for. We decided to leave the past behind and start a new life of trust and mutual respect. And although the path was not easy, we saw the light at the end of the tunnel. After we decided to start a new chapter in our lives, I felt like I was setting new goals for myself. Life seemed calmer and more balanced, but at the same time, I realized that our marriage was not yet fully restored. Trust is not something that can be regained in a day or a month. It is a process that requires constant work on both sides. Sarah became the woman I loved at the beginning of our marriage again. She showed more initiative, showed that it was important to her to make me happy. Her actions spoke more than any words. She continued to organize our family evenings, inventing new traditions for us and our children. For example, we started cooking dinner together every week. Simple meals that created a cozy atmosphere and reminded us why we were together. But even so, the shadows of the past sometimes awoke in me. There were days when I caught myself thinking, was I really able to forgive? Isn't the pain still deep in my heart? These questions were difficult, but I knew that only time would give me an answer. We continued to visit the family psychologist, although the sessions became less frequent. These meetings helped us learn to talk openly about our feelings. Sarah admitted that after everything that happened, she felt more mature. She said that she realized how important it is to appreciate what you have and not to look for happiness somewhere else. These words were important to me. I saw her change, and it helped me move forward. I also became more attentive to her feelings. If before I often focused on work and forgot about romantic gestures, now I try to make up for it. We started going out together more often, to the movies, for walks, even just to have coffee at our favorite coffee shop. One day I realized that it was time to do something special. I decided to organize a surprise for Sarah. It was a short trip to the place where we spent our honeymoon. I wanted to remind her of those days when we were carefree and happy. We left the kids with my parents and hit the road. This trip was a turning point for both of us. We talked a lot, remembering the best moments of our lives. Sarah was touched that I remembered the details of our honeymoon. We walked along the seashore, watched the sunset, and were silent, enjoying each other's company. This time helped us to become even closer. After returning home, I felt that our relationship had reached a new level. We started planning the future, which we hadn't talked about for a long time. We decided to renovate our house to update it and make the space more cozy. This project became a common goal for us, and we worked on it together. Our children also felt the changes. They became happier when they saw us laughing and spending time together. Their joy was the biggest proof for me that we were moving in the right direction. Despite all these positive changes, I realized that full forgiveness is not the end point. It is a daily work. There were moments when I remembered Lucas's letter or those evenings when I suspected Sarah. But every time these thoughts came up, I reminded myself that we had put it behind us. Sarah was changing too. She became more open. She shared her fears and worries with me, which she hadn't done before. Her openness helped me feel more confident about our future. On the eve of our next anniversary, I decided to take another important step. I wrote her a letter in which I expressed all my thoughts and feelings. I wrote how much I loved her, how much it hurt, but how grateful I was that she didn't give up and fought for our family. I thanked her for teaching me how to forgive and be a better man. That evening, we celebrated our anniversary at home. I read her my letter, and she burst into tears. She said it was the greatest gift I could have given her. We hugged, and I felt that I had finally truly forgiven her. It was a moment that became the final point of our long road to recovery. Our story is not perfect. It is full of mistakes, pain, and difficult decisions. But it is also about a love that has withstood the test. We both realized that a true relationship is not about not having problems, but about being willing to work through them together. What would you have done in our place? Was it worth fighting to save the marriage? Or would it have been better to separate? Share your thoughts in the comments.